Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your history with developing this child's play?
Absolutely. So I am actually originally from the East Coast and just moved here to California a few months ago. So I've only been at DICP for a few months, but I've always had a passion for pediatric physical therapy. I love working with kids. I was super excited to join DICP just because there's so many different medical professionals working together, which is such an awesome and unique environment to be a part of. And I have absolutely loved my time here so far.
So, Kaitlin, tell me a little bit why some kids might be referred for pediatric physical therapy at DICP.
Yeah, so children are typically referred to physical therapy for a number of different reasons. This can include developmental delays. It can include neurological diagnoses. Some common ones would be cerebral palsy, spina bifida, autism, as well as for general gross motor deficits, which will involve just certain weaknesses and imbalances. So typically for one reason or another, kids who come to physical therapy are having difficulties in their mobility. So they're not able to keep up with their peers. They're having some difficulties in the way that they move and the way that they do the activities of their day. And so then they'll come to physical therapy to get some help with that.
Great. They're very lucky to have you.
Yeah, and that kind of takes us into the goals of physical therapy. So what are some of the goals of PT? And I think the big question that a lot of families will have is, how is physical therapy different at DICP from occupational therapy at DICP?
Yeah, absolutely. So the goals of physical therapy are really to allow a person to function in regards to their mobility and their movement in the most optimal way. So a lot of people move around in their environment in different ways because everybody's different. But in physical therapy, we help to find the abilities and then the hardships that people are having, and then really work on those to make their mobility as efficient as possible. So physical therapy differs from occupational therapy in a lot of different ways. There is a lot of overlap, but occupational therapists look at all the activities that a child performs in a day. So this can include school-related activities, can include playing, anything that makes up their typical day-to-day lives. And so what they work on a lot is fine motor activities, improving a lot of these skills, environmental modifications, and things like that. Whereas physical therapy kind of looks at mobility and movement as a whole and how the child is functioning. So not just that a child can complete a task, but how they're able to complete it. So we'll look at what muscles are they using, what muscles are they not using that they should be, what compensations are they making, and then try to fix some of these imbalances to make their mobility as efficient as possible. So an in-person session is typically about an hour in length and can look totally different depending on what we're working on with the child. So typically they include some combination of strengthening, flexibility, balance, coordination, and endurance. And these are kind of just broad categories. But we really tailor it uniquely to each kid and what they need to be working on. And we work with them on an age-appropriate level. So whatever is appropriate for them at their age, what their mobility should look like. So in our sessions, we typically use a lot of verbal cues, a lot of hands-on cueing to try to get a child to participate in the most beneficial way. And then our goal is to allow them to develop and improve to train their bodies to do this without our help. So without our hands-on assistance, without our cueing. The teletherapy or virtual sessions are very similar, but it's just that I or another physical therapist won't be there to provide these hands-on cues. So it's a lot of education with parents or a caregiver, teaching them, kind of what they can do to help the child participate in the activities that we're doing together. So it's a little bit more education, a little bit more involvement on whoever is participating with the child, but the end goal and the end result is the same.
Wonderful.
And we talked a little bit about this with our speech therapist, Lydia, but so much of therapy happens at home outside of that actual therapy session. So what does a PT home program look like? What should the families expect in terms of continuing that work at home? And do they need to have special equipment in order to do PT homework at home?
Yeah, so the purpose of a home program really just is allow a child to potentially make progress quicker, make progress more efficiently by practicing things that we already do in physical therapy at home as well. So similarly to how adults have to work out several times a week to make progress in their fitness, the same thing applies to kids, the same thing applies to physical occupational speech therapy. So every home program will look different, just like every treatment will look different, but it typically will be kind of made up of things that they've already been doing in physical therapy or something similar to what we've been working on, so that the child is familiar with the activities. Hopefully the parents are familiar with the activities. And then there's a lot of education that goes on between us and the family on what to expect. We'll give out handouts and videos and pictures and kind of whatever that you guys need in order to make the home program as good as possible. And then in terms of any sort of equipment, a lot of household items can be creatively used to, turn into some sort of workout gadget. So depending on what things you may or may not have or what your comfort level is on obtaining things or not, just be open about that with the therapist that you're working with. And parents or caregivers always have the option to buy things to enhance their home exercise program, but it's not always necessary. And we can usually get pretty creative with stuff that's already around the house to make it work. So I'm really happy to be a part of DICP, and if any parents or caregivers feel like their child would benefit from physical therapy, just feel free to reach out and to get even just a basic evaluation. And if it will help, then we'll continue forward. And if not, we'll just have that discussion. But I look forward to meeting anybody who's interested.